Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we have a 2020 Coachmen Encore, and we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the Roadmaster Rear Anti-Sway Bar. One of the scariest things when driving a motorhome down the road is going to be how it reacts to the wind, how it reacts to turns, if you're going around in inner tight turns. And that is because with this specific chassis, the F53 chassis, they're going to use it, the manufacturers use it for all kinds of different things. They put motorhomes on top of the chassis, they'll put delivery trucks on top of the chassis, they'll do all kinds of different things with it, but the chassis is still built the same. They may throw different leaf springs under a delivery truck versus an RV, versus something else, but for the most part, they're all pretty much the same base model underneath. They just pick a box, stick it on top of it. Well, the issue with that is that this motorhome chassis may be a lot heavier than the delivery truck that may have been planned for this chassis before. As you notice, we have a slide from here all the way to the back of the camper. So that's about a 20-foot slide. That is an extreme amount of weight on the driver's side of our coach. That is where your rear anti-sway bar is going to come into play. Just keep in mind, this is going to be a second sway bar. Most of these coaches are going to come with one, but they really need a second one and maybe some more suspension enhancements in addition to that. This sway bar is going to mount behind the rear axle. The factory one is going to mount in front of it. But it's a very, very thick alloy steel construction that's going to be extremely beneficial when you're getting into the sway of things. This is going to help to control the side-to-side body roll when you're going on the road. And if you've ever driven one of these, or if you've ever ridden in one of them, it's very, very scary. When you start to get a body roll that's pretty far, it feels like the whole coach is going to tip over. This sway bar is going to help to prevent some of that. Let's go ahead and show you the quality of ride after we installed the sway bar in the coach now. Going over our test course after we put our rear sway bar in place, one thing I have noticed, and I typically notice with motorhomes that we add sway bars to, is that it still has a little bit of side-to-side movement, but it is more controlled. And that's what you're looking for. You're not going to be able to eliminate the fact that your RV is moving side to side or rocking back and forth, because that's what your suspension is supposed to do. If you didn't have any rocking back and forth, you would have to have a rigid suspension, and that's not a thing. You have to have a little bit of squish from side to side, but I noticed that there's a significant amount of more control when we're hitting these bumps. We'll go ahead and try to do a little bit of the slaloming. Yeah, not nearly as much rocking back and forth that we had before, because that stiffer rear end is that additional anti-sway bars really, really helped out stiffen that back end up. Now underneath our RV, you can see the rear anti-sway bar installed. Notice how all the components are nice and thick steel construction. They're bolted to the frame. This end link is super, super thick steel. You can see a lot of factory ones, and they've got these like little half-inch rods that'll go from the end of the sway bar up to the frame, and those have a lot of flex in them themselves. So when you try to go to flex the sway bar, because after all, that's how it's going to work. When the RV tries to lean one way, this bar is going to try to twist, and it always is going to want to recenter. You can see our factory one up front, and notice how we did not remove that. We're just adding one to it. To focus on the factory sway bar a little bit here, you'll notice how our end links here are only about 3/4 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But the sway bar itself, the biggest problem is the sway bar is supposed to be level. You'll see in the installation that we will level ours, and you want it to be level so that when you go to make those turns, the sway bar will twist. With it like this, it's not going to do as good a job because the ends of the sway bar are not level. With that in mind, the end links are also supposed to be straight up and down. So you can see how both of these factors in the factory sway bar are going to both be hindrance to the performance. So adding this extra sway bar in the back is really going to help to lock in this rear end. As far as the installation goes, I'd say probably the hardest part about it is, one, trying to do this from the ground if you're doing it at home, and two, being that these the leaf spring U-bolts you'll have to take those nuts loose on each one of them. That is 8 nuts that you'll have to take loose, and those are in the upwards of 300 foot-pounds to get re-torqued down. You will want to check your owner's manual in order to see what the exact amount is for your specific kit, but those are very, very difficult to torque back down. If you do not feel comfortable doing this installation, please check out our dealer locator, and it will direct you to an installer closest to you that can do this installation. But with that being said, let's go ahead and show you how we did it. To begin our installation, you're going to want to put your hydraulic jacks down in the rear to lift the back end of our vehicle up to relax the suspension, because this rear leaf spring is going to be in the way of these two bolts that we need to remove. We're going to take a 21mm socket. I've got the other side of our bolt sprayed down with some penetrating oil to help us get these off. You'll have a piece like this on the other side that'll come off. We want to hold on to this and the bolt. Now we're going to take our end link brackets that look like this, and you'll notice those two holes are going to line right up with our factory holes in our frame rail. The reason why we needed to relax the suspension is because the bolt head lines up perfectly with the leaf spring, so it doesn't allow you to get this bracket in place and to put the bolts back. You can get the bolts out without lifting the back of the RV up, but in order to get both of our bolts back in place, you'll have to lift it up. Slide those two back in, and then we'll take those nuts with these little plates on it. That's just to keep it from spinning. We'll take these and put them right back on. Once you get both of them started, then we can take our drill again and run those down. Make sure you lift up on the bracket so it's flat against the bottom of our frame. Then you'll want to come back with a torque wrench and torque these down to the specifications in the instructions. Now we need to get our underplates in place. They're going to bolt to the same spots as our U-bolts, or they're going to use our U-bolts to mount up. So we need to take these 4 28mm nuts off of our U-bolts. You want to make sure that your coach is back on its wheels, or back on its tires. We've got it on our lift here, so you don't want to be using your jacks for this, because that could cause a mess as your axle would drop. Now what might help is using a breaker bar and some penetrating oil to soak this hardware to be able to get these busted loose, because they are torqued down to a very high torque setting. Once you get those off, I do like to spray a little bit of penetrating oil here to help the hardware go back on a little bit smoother. If you get any on your brake, your disc brake there, we'll just take some brake cleaner and clean that off. We're going to take our plate. You want these 4 holes here to be facing the inside, so this cutout here is going to be for your brake caliper. We'll just lift it up into place. This point is also facing the rear of our RV, because that's where our sway bar is going to be installed. And we're going to run each one of these up just a little bit. We'll go back and forth, from side to side and front to back. And we're going to try our best to get this plate here back to where it was from the factory. Once you get both brackets installed, we're going to take a torque wrench and torque these down to the specifications and the instructions. This is a very, very high torque setting, so you want to be sure to get a torque wrench that'll go that high. Make sure you check in the instructions before you pick up the kit. And if you need to go out and rent one, you can definitely do that. Now we're going to take our end links, put them up into place. We'll start here in the bottom. If we need to lift it up, we can to make any fine adjustments. The spacing between these 2 holes are wider than these 2 holes, are these 3 holes here. So if we have to move this up and move this down a little bit when we get our sway bar in here, we can do that. Now we can lift our sway bar up into place. You may need another set of hands to be able to lift this up and put it on there. Some people will show you, and the instructions may show you to put it on your hangers here first. I prefer to do it this way because then we can get our hangers assembled on here, swing it up into place, and then bolt it in place. You want to be able to read the Roadmaster sticker, and then the sway bar is going to swing in this way. We'll pull it back, slide our bolt in from the outside. And then we'll follow it up with a nylon lock nut. The other reason I like doing it like this is because we can get a better idea of exactly where our hangers are going to go on this side. So we'll just put a mark in the center of these two holes on our bar, and that's where our bushing is going to go. Before we put our bushings on, you want to take the grease that comes in the kit, and we're going to just put some on the inside of this bushing. This stuff is pretty gnarly stuff, so you definitely want to wear gloves when you're doing this. Once we get the grease in place, we'll take it, and wherever we put that line on our sway bar, you want to put it right on there. The reason why we put that line there is because you can tell how nasty this stuff is. You don't want it to get all over your sway bar because then it won't be inside your bushing. Then we can swing our sway bar up into place. We'll put our bracket on. We're going to line it up. You want to make sure that you've got a flat washer on top and a flat washer on bottom, then follow it up with a nylon lock nut. Then we'll come back with a 19mm socket and wrench and get this hardware tightened down. I noticed after we had our sway bar installed, we come back, that's what these holes are for. You've got 3 down here, 2 up there to adjust it, fine tune it to get this sway bar as level as possible. So all I did was take the bolt out, move it from this hole, move it up, now our sway bar is level. So we'll come back and tighten and torque all of this hardware. Well guys, once you get everything torqued down, that's going to do it for the installation. Hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the Roadmaster Rear Anti-Sway Bar is right for you and your RV.